Welcome to Double Strike Recap. Now I will recap the most epic film of all time. American thriller action movie, the year 2023. John Wick Chapter 4. Spoilers ahead.
At the beginning of the film we see John Wick in training. He lives with the Bowery King and John continues to prepare himself for revenge on the high table. John flies to Morocco. After killing all of the elder's men, John arrives there to demand freedom from the highest minister at the high table. Finally, John met the elder in person. The new elder is a substitute for the previous elder who died. John immediately asked the elder for freedom, but the elder refused. Without further ado, John immediately killed the elder. As a result of the murder of the elder, Winston, the manager of the Continental New York Hotel, is fired by the ruler of the high table, Marquis Vincent de Gramont. Winston has lost his grip on New York and the Marquis blows up the Continental Hotel in New York.
Patience.
The Marquis also kills Karen, a hotel receptionist, and Winston's best friend. Winston's status has become excommunicado. We turn to Paris, featuring a former assassin named Kane. He is a former co-worker of John Wick. The Marquis called and ordered Kane to kill his old friend, John Wick. At first, Kane refused because he was retired. However, because the Marquis threatened to kill Kane's child, Kane accepted the assignment. We move to the Continental Osaka Hotel, Japan. There is a tracker named Mr. Nobody who booked a hotel room with their dog. Hotel Continental Osaka is run by a manager named Koji and his daughter Akira as receptionists. Akira, knowing about the friendship between his father and John Wick, warns his father that anyone who gets involved with John Wick will surely die. In this scene, we learn that Koji has given his protection to John. Koji delivers news about New York's Continental Hotel which has been destroyed because John killed the elder. In the hotel lobby, the Marquis men arrive and they ask to see the manager. Akira immediately ordered his men to quietly evacuate all the occupants of the hotel, after which he gave the news to Koji, that the high table envoy had arrived. Koji who had come was surprised to see Kane with the high table people. Not wanting to just give up, he chose to fight against the high table and was willing to protect John Wick because they were good friends and the fight ensued.
¡Mátenlos a todos!
Koji and his army are surrounded. Meanwhile, Akira and John are attacked on the rooftop. The Marquis men fight against the hotel's many troops and finally, we see Kane's cool action. Even though Kane is blind, he is very agile and also smart. He set an automatic doorbell, as a signal if there is an enemy there. Akira was shot so he had to be guarded by Koji. Koji also told John to escape to the train station, while he was going to take Akira away. Before leaving, John defeats some of high table's troops and as he has no weapons left he also uses a double stick. After successfully killing several troops, John finally met his old friend, Kane. A duel ensues. As John is being pressured, Mr. Nobody interrupts their fight allowing John to escape. On the other hand, now John Wick's bounty has increased to 20 million. Finally, John met Mr. Nobody is here. We know that he is not helping John, but he just wants to take care of John because he is waiting for John's gifts to be expensive for him to eat. Koji and Akira meet Kane who has killed his men. And the duel begins.
Take care of your daughter.
Koji is killed, but Kane lets Akira go because of his friendship with Koji. John arrives at the train station. He meets an injured Akira and Akira promises Kane will die either by his hands or by John's. Back in New York, Winston meets the Bowery King and stares at the ruins of his hotel. Winston told Bowery he wanted to meet John. Elsewhere, an advisor to the High Table advises the Marquis to be careful as he doesn't think the destruction of 2 continental hotels is necessary just to catch zombie. Mr. Nobody is brought before the Marquis. There, the Marquis was curious about Mr. Nobody can track down John Wick and Mr. Nobody asked for a fee of $30 million if the Marquis wanted to use his services. The enraged Marquis thrust his knife into Mr. Nobody and gave him a choice. Remove the knife for just $10 million or tear a hand and get $30 million. And he chose to tear his hand off for $30 million. The scene changes, and we see John returning to New York to meet Winston. Winston advises John to duel with the Marquis using old-school traditions, but the condition is that the challenge must come from the family and John has no family anymore, so Winston orders John to improve his relationship with the Ruska-Roma family in Berlin. John arrives in Berlin, and we see Mr. Nobody spying on the place. He reports to the Marquis that John is in the church and asks for a gift, but the Marquis says that Mr. Nobody must kill John to get the reward. Inside, John was arrested and hanged because the leader of Ruska-Roma was killed because John Wick killed the elder and now Katya is taking over from her parents. John says they have the same enemy, so it's better to work together. John offers a duel with the Marquis, but John needs the approval of Roma's Ruska family. Katya agrees on the condition that John must kill Keela, the person who killed his parents. John was taken to Keela's headquarters. There was also Kane waiting for John. Plus at that time Mr. Nobody also wants to meet John Wick, so Keela invites them to play cards to determine who has the right to be killed. When playing cards John gets the lowest card while Keela gets the high card so they know that Keela is playing unfairly. They also decide to work together to fight Keela and his men. John manages to shoot Keela in the buttocks which makes her run into the crowd, so the fight continues in the crowd. Finally, John manages to kill Keela and takes her gold tooth as proof. Outside Mr. Nobody who had the chance to shoot John Wick was prevented by Kane. John brought the tooth to Katya and Katya finally accepted John as family again. The scene switches to Winston who challenges Marquis to a duel with John. He eventually accepts on the condition that if John wins, John will get his freedom from the High Table and Winston gets his Hotel Continental back. But if John loses, then John and Winston will be killed. They will also discuss the rules of the duel which will be carried out later in Paris near the Eiffel Tower. The two parties met and discussed the agreement on the rules in the duel later. This meeting was chaired by the High Table advisor. The rules have been set. They will duel the gun right at sunrise which will be carried out in the church Basilica Sacré-Cœur and if John does not arrive on time then John and Winston will be executed. But cunningly, the Marquis are allowed to choose an aide in the fight and he chooses Kane to against John's. If John wins then he will get freedom and Winston get back Hotel Continental. But if John loses then he will be executed along with Winston. Before the fight, John went to church to pray. There John met Kane, and they exchanged greetings. Kane as John's old partner did not expect to duel to death and both of them were also forced to do that. In his headquarters the advisor warns the Marquis that he is now challenging the Baba Yaga. Still in Paris, John went to the Bowery headquarters. He gave John equipment to fight in a bulletproof suit. On the other hand, the Marquis began to carry out his plan. He also increased John Wick's bounty of $26 million for John Wick's life before morning came. The Bowery got John as close as they could get to Basilica Sacré-Cœur. The communicator saw John Wick so he spread the information to all the assassins so that the fight could not be avoided. John managed to escape to the Paris roundabout and he was constantly being targeted by the existing assassins including the Marquis men.
But I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed. I'll take all the pressure like I'm acing this test. Tear it up like I'm Jason. I see the world like it's ready for the taking. I see this place like a game I'm playing. Straight to the bank to collect my payments. No negotiations, it's my way. I was born impatient, and like a damn Freemason, I'll run this nation.
With the help of Mr. Nobody, John manages to survive and he enters an old building. The Marquis, who was getting restless, called Mr. Nobody, but he asked the Marquis to increase John Wick's bounty to $35 million for his services in killing John Wick. The Marquis refused and hung up. Mr. Nobody is still helping John Wick. But because all the killers couldn't beat John, the Marquis called again. Unfortunately, the deal was raised to $40 million. The Marquis was forced to agree immediately and Mr. Nobody joins the hunt for John Wick. A duel ensued between John and Mr. And when Mr. Nobody was about to be killed by John Wick, the Marquis men came and John saw Mr. Nobody's dog who wanted to be shot by the Marquis men. So John chose to save Mr. Nobody's dog. After that, John immediately left, and this made Mr. Nobody confused. As John was about to climb the stairs to the church, the remaining assassins were waiting for him. In 10 minutes the sun would rise, so Winston was starting to worry John wasn't there. The scene returns to John's fight. John managed to defeat all the killers, but he met again with the Marquis men who immediately kicked John down again. Kane comes along and helps John climb up and we finally see how cool the partnership between John and Kane is. Not only Kane, but Mr. Nobody also helps John Wick because he feels indebted to John. After all, John saved his dog. Using a pencil, Kane succeeded in crippling the Marquis men and finally, he ended with his ball being bitten by dog Mr. Nobody and immediately ended with one shot. Mr. Nobody killed him. Finally, John and Kane made it to the top just in time for sunrise. The duel will start soon. They have to shoot each other first at a distance of 30 meters.
Fire!
Since neither of them fell, the duel continued at a distance of 20 meters.
Fire!
John was shot in the shoulder. Kane was shot in the stomach, so the duel continued at 10 meters.
Fire!
John Wick was also shot in the stomach, which sent him crashing to the ground. The Marquis, who saw that, took the opportunity to finish off John Wick with his own hands. He took the gun from Kane and freed Kane and his daughters. But unlucky for the Marquis, when he was about to shoot John, Winston interrupted and said,
He didn't shoot.
Without further ado, John directly shot the Marquis. Finally, with his wits, John manages to kill the Marquis and now he is released from the high table while Winston gets his hotel back, and Kane and his daughter are released. Now everyone wins and John asks Winston to take him home. John sits on the stairs remembering his late wife and John finally lays down. The scene moves to New York, where Winston and Bowery confront a gravestone that reads, John Wick, a loving husband, as John requested. The movie ends. Wait, ellipsis. Are you sure John Wick is dead? Seems like a lot of mystery is hidden at the end of John Wick Chapter 4, what do you think? Please write in the comments column.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to get more video like this, turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.